Previously, we defined creative process as the ways in which people do, go about, and engage in creative acts. We also delineated two types of process, ideational and experiential. We talked about how ideational process refers to the steps people can take to come up with and develop their best ideas, and experiential process as the steps people can take to get into their creative flow. A long lineage of people who observe creativity at work, who study creative process, have identified that creative people tend to develop their ideas in two separate and distinct stages. One of these is a more generative stage, and the other is a more explorative stage. Now, people tend to generate first. They come up with ideas, and once they've done that, they explore those ideas. They work with them. They develop them. These generative and explorative stages, they tend to happen in distinct and separate moments, and this is observed in highly creative people. Let's talk about the generative stage. When we generate, when we engage in a generative moment, we come up with ideas. That's why it's called generative. Generative thought happens by making mental associations, and these mental associations, they tend to happen unconsciously or pre-consciously. Generative thought at its best is very associative. It relies on the association of typically unconnected mental representations, depictions of worldly things in our minds. What else happens in generative thought? Well, people tend to think in a particular way. They don't tend to think logically, but rather they suspend logical thought and rely more on intuition. They tend to think intuitively. So that's the generative stage. What about the explorative stage? During exploration, during explorative moments of the creative process, we work with ideas that were generated earlier. So let's say we already generated a whole bunch of ideas and now we're working with those ideas. We're exploring them. We're cognitively processing them. We're having discussions about them with other people. We're really working with these ideas. This type of explorative work tends to engage critical and logical thinking more than intuitive thinking. So we tend to think more analytically during explorative moments of the creative process. You see, we have these two different stages of process, two different phases in our creative work. Creatively successful people tend to have a generative phase and an explorative phase. And the model of creativity explaining this dual stage approach is called the Geneplore model of creative process. To enhance our creativity, to enhance our ability to perform creatively, it's important for us to develop our aptitudes, our capacities, and our skills. And there are different types of creative thinking skills that are important for us to develop. One important area of skill development relates to generative ideas, and another relates to exploring those ideas. And there are different skill sets that accompany each of those. So, to enhance our creativity, it's important to develop generative skills, and it's important to develop explorative skills. It's important to learn to leverage our intuitive thought during generative moments and our analytic thought during explorative moments.